Welcome back. Today we are going to do an in-depth tour of my garden here in June, and it's going to be a pretty unique tour. We've had a really weird weather year so far, so some things are doing really well while others are so embarrassing, and I've had to do some interventions that I've never done before. I'm hoping they'll pay off. So yeah, you'll just see when we get to that part of the tour. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Katie. I'm a Zone 3/Zone 4 Minnesota gardener, and we live a self-sufficient lifestyle where we try to grow and produce the majority of what we eat over the year. And it can definitely be challenging growing food up here because we're gonna freeze again in mid-September. So it's pedal to the metal. Here we go, try and grow as much food as we can in a short amount of time. I also added a new garden space this spring. I'm trying some new varieties, things that I've never grown before, so can't wait to show it all to you. Let's start the tour. So this is what I like to call my back garden. This is where the bulk of all the food production happens, and this is roughly a 1,300 square foot garden. It's 52 feet wide and 25 feet long. I believe I have 13 rows. And this is where I'm going to admit that I think I made a mistake. I am a greedy gardener, and I made my rows 3 feet wide, and the walking paths are 1 foot wide. And last year, if you saw my garden tours, I was just swimming in plants. I think the walking rows were just a little bit too narrow. And as you'll see over there, it's happening again. I did learn from some of my mistakes last year, but it's still a challenge. So I think going forward, if I were to do this garden again, I would go for 1.5 foot, maybe even 2 foot wide walking paths, just to give me a little bit more wiggle room. But if you're limited on space, this is definitely the best way to maximize every inch. And you may have noticed my fencing. I always get a lot of questions about this. So this is electric poultry netting. This stuff is awesome. I've been using it for gosh, maybe 7 or 8 years now, and it's great. Even though it's not very tall, for some reason, the deer don't even attempt to jump it. I've never had anything break through. The bunnies, squirrels, chipmunks, you know, my dogs, the chickens, you name it. So this is awesome. I'll link it in the video description if you're interested in adding something like this on. And you can run it by solar too, which is great. And you may notice that the chickens are not out and about today. They have been locked up over the last month or so because we had a coyote come through and take a few. So actually I have a second set of electric poultry netting set up so that they can still be out and free range but be protected. So this stuff is awesome, so you can use it for both purposes. So let's start in this first section here, which is largely my brassicas. They love our Minnesota, typically cool summers. I'll get into that in a few minutes, but overall they're doing okay. And the biggest question that I get asked is, how do you keep the cabbage worms off of them? They are largely untouched. Actually, I don't even think I've noticed one cabbage worm yet. And my key to success, and you may have noticed already, is I have a lot of companion planting flowers in here. So this is my chamomile. I have some marigolds here. I also have a lot of calendula, more marigolds, and then nasturtiums are back here as well. And then this one here, I'm embarrassed to say I can't remember what it is. It's a new variety of flower that I'm growing this year. I want to say it's bachelor button, but there's no flowers on it yet, so it's not coming to me at the moment. You'll see more companion planting flowers back there as well. So that has really served me well, and they just look beautiful to have a little pop in here. Plus calendula. Unfortunately, there's not a ton of blooms on here since I picked them all yesterday. This is such a wonderful companion planting flower because it's also medicinal. So I use these all the time in salves because it's known to be so soothing and help basically any skin ailment. So I use it for, you know, bug bite balms, or I'll put it even just in my tallow balm, which is my lotion essentially. It just feels so good on the skin. So it's best to pick these in a full sun day so that the resins are high. So I wouldn't pick them today because they're a little bit more cloudy, but yesterday was very hot. It was 95 degrees and sun, which is very unusual for us here in June. And I was actually quite afraid for my brassicas because they typically don't like heat. So I set up a whole shade cloth over the weekend, and I was so nervous that they were gonna bolt and look like trash for a garden tour, but they did it. They survived and we're looking okay. So let's go ahead and start with this section here. So these are my broccoli plants. This is the Bellstar F1 variety and I love it. I've been growing this variety for many, many years. It always produces a good, reliable, not only main head, we're just starting here, so we have a long ways to go on that head, but it'll also produce little side shoots. So you'll see that in garden tours later this summer. So I just leave this plant in all summer and it continuously produces for me. I believe I have 16 plants. I have 8 of them here and then there's 8 more over there. And I'm starting to question my spacing. I did 18-inch spacing and as you can see, we are bleeding well into the walking row. They probably need 24 inches. They're just really thriving in this space and happy, happy, happy. So I may need to change my spacing on these like I did with my cabbages. So we'll look at that in a minute. As you can see, no cabbage worm, no damage. Everything is just looking pretty darn happy so far, despite all of that heat this weekend. I have more calendula here, and then this is my sad thing. So I had 4 Brussels sprout plants, but this one just up and died for no reason. The rest of them look great. They look healthy. They're growing the same rate. They have nice, vibrant leaves. We're developing little bits of the Brussels sprouts on there, but yeah, that one just up and died. So I just pulled that one out of the ground a few days ago. I'm gonna have to figure out what I want to put there. And I always grow my Brussels sprouts in cages because they get pretty tall. They'll get, you know, maybe at least this tall, maybe 4 feet tall. So a little bit of support is helpful. And these are slow producers. Usually, you know, most of the brassicas I'll harvest within the month, at least the bulk of it. But these guys, I usually wait till there's been a frost, so September. So 100+ days, I believe, for Brussels sprouts. So you really need to plan ahead on those guys. And last year's Brussels sprout harvest was awful, so fingers crossed that this year will be better. And then now here are my cabbages. If you followed me last year, you might remember I had a massive cabbage year. One of my heads was 22.2 pounds, which is just wild to me. And so then this year I decided to give them a little bit more room by staggering them. And I believe I did 24-inch spacing for this instead of doing them side by side like I did with the broccoli. You can see they're going side by side. So even still, I mean, this cabbage plant is taking up more than this 3-foot wide bed. It's way into the walking path. So these cabbages are just really cranking away. I don't know. Hoping to definitely have a good year for sauerkraut. That's what we end up doing with most of the cabbages that we grow. We do a little bit of fresh, you know, for coleslaw or whatever, but sauerkraut is our go-to, and we are just finishing our last jar from last year. So soon, hopefully, you know, we're just starting to get our little heads, so we still have a ways to go, but maybe by next month we'll have some ready to harvest. And I did do some little interplantings of the chamomile in here because I did have little gaps with this alternating method, and I love being able to just kind of cover the soil, and I didn't think they would get in the way of the cabbages, and so far so good. They obviously don't seem like they are inhibiting the growth at all. But certainly having issues with the walking paths. I don't even bother walking through here right now, so we'll go back around this way. And I think this one is going to be my biggest cabbage for sure. I mean, you can see my hand for reference. Before we move on over there, I want to show you something that's not a brassica. So I have my zucchini plant here. It's looking a whole lot better than the one I had last year. I had issues with a store-bought zucchini, but I was able to get my seeds to germinate with fresh seeds this year. So this one I can call my own, and I'm trying something different. I've been seeing people staking their zucchini so it'll grow vertically and it'll help save some space, especially because I don't want it to end up getting zapped by the fence and having to manage that. So we'll see. I already have some little zucchinis on here. It liked the heat wave over the weekend, and we'll see how it does. And then for my third row of brassicas, I have a few new things going on over here. But before we jump to that, I have more of this mystery flower. I want to say these are bachelor buttons. If someone knows, let me know in the comments, but we'll find out before long once they start blooming. It looks like we're getting close. All right, so these guys are gonna be fun. Cauliflower is fairly new to me. This one's cauliflower, and that one's cauliflower. I think I grew it for the first time a couple of years ago, and it was decent, but I'm hoping that this year will be even better. I think we are still waiting, you know, on the head development again. So just kind of hanging out, but the leaves are looking pretty good. This one does seem to have a little bit of damage, but the rest of it all looks okay. So I'm not sure what happened there. But my new thing that I've never grown before, and I've actually never eaten it before either, but I imagine it's gonna be good, is this one, and this one are Romanesco. They look beautiful, and I've always seen, you know, pictures of people growing them and oogled over it, and then I thought, why don't I grow it? Let's give it a whirl. So we're gonna give it a try. Just barely starting to get head development on there as well. And then I have a nasturtium in here that is really starting to fill out. No blooms yet, but I love nasturtiums for companion planting. They just do such a great job of repelling those pests while also bringing in the beneficial pollinators. So love nasturtiums. Then we have more broccolis here. We grow a lot of broccoli. I would say that's one of my favorite vegetables to freeze. It freezes really well. Same with green beans. So those are kind of my two big preservation vegetables that we grow here. And then over here I have another new companion planting flower for me. I want to say this is salvia. You guys, I'm not so much into the flowers. I'm more of a vegetable girl, so I apologize, but I'm pretty sure this is salvia. So I don't know, it sounded fun. I wanted to branch out and try something new. And then lastly is the kale. I have 6 kale plants, so I really dialed it back. Last year I think I did 12 plants. I had a whole second variety over here, and that was just too much kale. It's just the two of us. We eat a lot of kale, but not that much kale. And the variety that I cut out was the black magic kale. I just felt like it wasn't as good of a producer as this one. This is a Run F1 kale, and it's just beautiful. It freezes really well. It's also good fresh, especially if you get a little massage with just a little bit of salt. Ooh, we just love it, especially for salads. Like after the lettuce has bolted, this is still good. This is such a wonderful, wonderful food to have on hand. I feel like it's underappreciated and not many people get as excited about kale as I do, but it is great in, you know, quiches. You can put it in lasagna. It's great in soups and again, salads. You can put it frozen in smoothies. There are so many ways that you can use kale, and this has just been such an awesome variety. And when I've had years of pests in the past, like the cabbage worms, they seem to avoid this variety and go for the other ones. So yeah, just can't recommend this one enough. So I think that's it for the whole Brassica section, minus my little chunk of the zucchini. I do have a couple extra plants that are just sitting here waiting to be planted somewhere. I just never really quite got around to it. It's largely the flowers. Now what's interesting is a lot of these nasturtiums have bloomed. I think they were waiting for a bit more heat. It has been a very cold May and June actually, until this weekend of course. I had some of the latest plantings that I can ever remember. You'll see that further down as we get to the hot loving plants, but even until last week my soil temp was still about 50 degrees. So we probably needed that little kickstart this weekend where it was 95 degrees for 2 days, but whew, that is too hot for me. I'm a Minnesota girl at heart, and I would much rather take, you know, -20 over a 95-degree day with humidity. So that was a little rough. I was worried about my plants, but I can already tell that my heat-loving plants are a lot happier after that little boost. So let's go ahead and check that section out. Okay, so here is something totally new. I have never grown these before, and you're gonna laugh. And they are just the simple pea. I don't know why I've never grown them before. I like peas, they just, I don't know, just never occurred to me. So I finally decided, oh, let's grow peas. So here we go. I think I have just a couple of them growing here. I think there's 2 or 3 plants. So I always like to test the waters before I totally invest in, you know, a large amount of something. So this is just kind of my experiment. We'll see how it grows. I can kind of get a understanding better of what it likes, what it doesn't like, how much we end up using of it. So the bulk of what I have here, this is just cattle panel fencing that's just on T-posts, and I have them, I don't know, about a foot apart so that I can really maximize the space. But the rest of it is cucumbers. Sounds like the chickens are having a ball over there. I'll have to check it out in a minute. But these are the, ooh, is it called the Little Leaf H19 pickling cucumber? Okay, I'm gonna have to go check it out. What are you guys all excited about? My goodness. Hello? Are you guys okay? My goodness. Probably someone just laid an egg. Wow. 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 How are we doing? Everything looks fine. While we're in here though, I'll show you our newest little babies. Got Mama with her little chicks. What do you think, honey? They're about a week old. She's doing a great job. Okay, well, I'm glad we averted that disaster. Good job, guys. Okay, back to the tour. I know, I love you too. Okay, back to the cucumber. So I only grow one kind of cucumber now. This is a pickling cucumber. I've since ditched the slicer cucumbers because I got to realizing that pickling cucumbers aren't only good for pickling. They're delicious fresh as well. So I just kind of simplified everything, and so now we use it for fresh eating, fridge pickles, fermented pickles, you name it. It is just delicious, and you can just keep things simple. And we are getting close. You can see that little bit of heat is just what we needed. I've noticed quite a burst in the vine development, and hopefully we'll have some pickles to eat before long. All right, so now we have moved on to the tomatoes. It's feeling much less congested over here compared to Brassica land. I don't know. I can't decide if I am gonna space these out more or if we'll just deal with it for a while. But I mean, so far their growth obviously isn't being limited by competition or anything. It's just annoying to get in there. So tomatoes, let's talk about mulch before we get into tomatoes, because you're probably going to notice I have a few different things going on here. This is something that I've really leaned into over the last few years. I never used to mulch, and now I'm really starting to see the benefit of it. And I use two different kinds. So underneath the plants, I do organic straw. I just get a bunch of bales from a local farm. I just found them through Facebook Marketplace. Because a lot of the straw that you'll find at your garden centers have been sprayed with herbicides, and that's the last thing you want to go on your plants, on your food. So highly recommend sticking it out and looking for an organic one. And then I also do wood chips for the walking paths. So the reason why I like to do the two different kinds is because this one is kind of semi-permanent. This is a lot harder to clean up, and that's fine because on the walking paths, I'm not going to end up growing food in here. This is probably always going to be a walking path, so this is great. And the wood chips are free now that we have a wood chipper. Where the organic straw, this is easy to just pull up at the end of the season. It composts really well, so I end up throwing it into my compost bins back there, along with, I also use the same organic straw as bedding in my coop. So it just works really, really well. And I like having the two different kinds of mulch too, because it just provides a good little visual change, I suppose, instead of doing the same thing for everything. And the reason why I like using mulch is it's great for multiple things. One is weed suppression. You can see that I have very few weeds in here. They'll still pop up, you know, here and there, you know, especially on the edges. I have a few here, but it greatly reduces my weeding needs. You'll see over on the section over there, which we haven't gotten to yet. Oh my gosh, there's so many weeds because I don't have mulch on there. And there are still some sections like this that I purposely don't have mulch. Same with the zucchini plant over there. And then over there with like my squash and corn, which we'll get to. The reason why I don't mulch those is because soil temperature. Our soil temp up until the last few days has been very cold, and I was really trying to get the soil temp up as quickly as possible for these heat-loving plants. Because what I found is that once you mulch, it reduces the soil temperature by about 7 degrees, which might be really beneficial if you're in a hot area. I would definitely recommend doing mulch. And yes, some of the mulch will throw some seeds, you know, like some, it's typically wheat, you know, here you can see here's a wheat seed head that's in here. But the point that I like to make is that yes, it'll send up one flush of seeds as they germinate, you pull them out and then you're done. It's not like regular weeds where they're constantly coming out. So yes, you'll get one flush. They already largely germinated and I pulled them out, but one and done, and then you can just move on. Okay, so now let's talk tomatoes. I have a few varieties going on here, and I definitely made some changes after my mistake with experimenting with the Amish paste tomato last year. That was awful. You can check out, I have a few videos talking about those if you're interested, but I've learned from my mistake and I've gone back to my tried and true. This is the Plum Regal. I have 10 of those. Those are gonna be my main paste tomatoes for making, you know, pasta sauce and pizza sauce and tomato sauce and all the things there. And I just love this tomato. It's the most blight resistant paste tomato that I've been able to find. It just is a rock star. It's also a determinate variety, so it's going to be smaller, which means I can get away with my cages. I am a cage gal. I just like the simplicity of I throw them in and I'm done. I don't have to come up with some fancy big trellising, you know, situation. And determinate is also really nice. Since I have a really short growing season, I need my tomatoes now and I need them fast. So the appeal of an indeterminate tomato is that it can keep producing for a very long time. You can get these huge long vines if you have a long growing season. I do not, so let's just get her done. So I have 10 of those. I've been really trying to get on pruning to get everything up and off the ground so that hopefully there's no blight issues. We're getting some little flowers, but we're definitely a ways from having tomatoes. And then I do have some fresh eating ones. This is my pink bower tomato. This is always like such a rock star. You can see how much bigger it is from my Plum Regals, and it's just gorgeous. I love these tomatoes. I grew it for the first time last year, and I like that they're a smaller slicer because I'm mostly the one that likes to eat fresh tomatoes. Ryan not so much, so I don't necessarily always want to commit to a huge tomato. And look at this, we already have a little tomato on there, and you can see the striping on there is just gorgeous. So this will be really fun. Hopefully we have another good year for that. And then the seed developer for the Plum Regal tomato actually reached out to me last year about these 2 new varieties that he just came out with, and I said, heck yeah, I'll definitely try it. So this one is called the Mountain Sunrise, so that one's gonna be super fun. And then this one over here is called the Sweet Prince. So can't wait to give those a try. I believe these are gonna be more like plum tomatoes. I can't remember exactly. We'll just find out as it ripens. And then over here is another one of my tried and true. I've been growing this for a long time. This is the Mountain Sunrise. These are cute little cherry tomatoes. It's also a very blight resistant variety. And something else to note is this one, this one, this one, and this one. Basically my non-Plum Regals, they are indeterminate varieties. So they do tend to get a little bit more sprawly. So I have to kind of keep up on keeping them trimmed so that they don't totally fall over. And sometimes I do have to stake my cages. So that is the negative of using my cage method. But again, our season is so short, it usually is a non-issue. They don't end up getting that big before the season is done in mid-September. And I actually planted these not too long ago. Again, we had a pretty cold spring, and so I planted these on May 31st, and even that was pushing it. I just kind of felt like I needed to get them in the ground. Where my really cold sensitive plants like my cucumbers, I didn't plant those until June 7th. So thankful that they're starting to catch up now with that heat wave this weekend. And then at the end of the tomatoes here, we have a few more things going on. Of course, more companion planting flowers like the calendula. I have some more chamomile going here. This is lovely for teas. It's just like a really great bedtime tea. You can dry them, and yeah, just wonderful. And then here are celery. This has been so great. I freeze dried a lot of it last year and I used it all winter. It was great for just bases of soups. Anywhere you would use a mirepoix, it was just so great. So definitely doing more. I think I have, I don't know, 8 or 10 of them in here. They can be grown a little bit more closely together. So they're just doing great. They're thriving. Have another nasturtium here. And then over here is my experiment. So these are eggplant. They need heat. And last year it was just like, we had such a cold, rainy year again, and they completely died. So that was a wash. We'll see how they do. You can see they are unmulched. I'm trying to get as much heat into those baby eggplants as I can. They're looking a whole lot better after that 95-degree weekend. So I'm hoping that'll give them the little boost that they need. I only have 2. I'm not going to invest a lot of garden space into them. We'll see. Then the next row is where I learned my lesson last year. So this is my green beans. This is a huge production plant for us. Again, the green beans are one of my favorite vegetables to freeze and eat frozen. A lot of frozen vegetables to me are just kind of like, meh, not that great, but green beans I feel like are wonderful that way. So I try to grow as much green beans as we can realistically eat. We are still going through our last few bags out of the deep freeze. I think we have 2 left, so I think we did it pretty good. And last year I was greedy. You can see the theme here. I'm a little greedy gardener. I did 4 rows of green beans. That was insane. They just like totally took over this whole space, and I couldn't even get through here, and it was hard to harvest. And harvest time is really important for green beans because you want to get in there and harvest every couple of days because you want to get them when they're fresh. So this year I'm reining it in. I did 3 rows, and then I did a few more companion planting in here as well. So this is that mystery flower again. I think it's the bachelor button. And then down here are the marigolds. So these guys are still small. We still have ways to go. Still early in the season, but we're getting there. All right, so next over here are my potatoes. Look at them go. This has been such kind of like a back and forth of an experience with the potatoes. It started out awful. We had such a cold spring. We had multiple freezes. And after I had planted my potatoes, and a lot of them rotted in the ground. So my germination was really spotty or sprouting. And so I actually had potatoes all the way up in here, but then it was all spotty, and I was like, oh, what am I gonna do with that, with all these empty holes? And so I did something I've never done before. I took a shovel and I scooped up this front section of sprouts and moved them to fill in the gaps back there, so at least they could be concentrated. I didn't know if that would work or not, if they would like to be disturbed, but obviously they're doing well. Everything is looking really good here. This is the red chieftain potato. This is like, gosh, I've been growing this for almost 10 years probably. It stores really well. They're delicious. We just love them. And how I like to hill them, if you will, is just an extra layer of straw. It is like super deep in here because I don't want to be digging into my wood chip walking path to hill up the tubers. And the reason why you typically hill them or bury them is so that the potatoes stay cool. So extra layer of straw seems to do it. They are super happy. I was worried. I made sure to do that extra layer of straw before the heat wave hit this summer. So we'll see how they do. I also have a second section back here. These are russet potatoes. I've actually never grown russet potatoes before, and I realized that why not? They're such a great just kind of production one. I could make a bunch of hash browns and freeze it because I'm still buying hash browns, which seems silly. So I'm gonna make my own now. So we'll see how those do. That's largely this section, and a little bit back there are the russets. And then for this empty section here, I debated what to do then, and I ended up having some extra onion seedlings. So I decided to throw them here. I think they'll be happy, but the main bulk of them is up over there past the garlic. Well, so we'll talk more about onions in depth when we get to that section. And then over here is my least favorite vegetable to grow, which are carrots. They're so finicky. It's hard to get them to germinate. Weeding in between them is just a nightmare. You can see I have all sorts of weeds in there. So this is my least maintained bed, but carrots are such a great crop. They hold in storage really, really well. I just end up putting them in a plastic bag in the crisper drawer, and they're good all the way through spring. So I need to grow them, even though I don't enjoy growing them, but eating them all through the winter is wonderful. I have a few different varieties here. I have my short season carrot here, so I'm going to be harvesting that one first, largely for fresh eating this summer. And then my outside rows. Those are my long season carrots, so I'm not gonna harvest those until the end of the season, and those ones store really, really well. So a couple things going on here, and fingers crossed that they don't get the aster yellows. Last year, aster yellows pretty much wiped out all my carrots, and it was so, so sad. Same with all my companion planting flowers, they all got infected. So I'm hoping that since we got a decent winter this year that kind of killed off the bug that spreads that around, we will see. So far, so good. Next up is my garlic, and I think it's safe to say this is probably my best garlic year yet. It's just looking incredible, and the scapes are just starting to pop. I harvested a bunch of them yesterday. It looks like I have a few more ready to go. These scapes are so good. Don't miss out on these if you're growing garlic. We just love them grilled. We'll just put them on the grill with some seasoning. You can put some tallow or olive oil on them and basically treat them like asparagus. You can also make pesto out of them. And not only are they delicious, but it's gonna help your garlic grow. So this is basically going to seed. The garlic plant is putting its energy into this scape, and we don't want that. We want the energy going into the garlic bulb. And so snipping this off is gonna tell it, nope, we're focusing on that. So you'll get bigger bulbs as well. I do have a couple helpful articles on growing garlic, when to harvest garlic scapes, how to do it, all the things. I'll make sure to link that in the description if you want to learn a little bit more about garlic. But garlic I plant in the fall, usually early October. So this guy has been in the garden for a long time. Probably be able to harvest the garlic later in July. And then this is my worst ever section. This is where my corn is supposed to be. Do you see any corn? All I see are weeds. Oh my gosh, I had really poor germination because I planted and then it got cold again. And I think a lot of it rotted in the ground or whatever. So I have some of it is up. I have a little bit there. You know, a few of them are coming through, but I had to go back a few days ago and reseed a bunch of it. I don't know, I feel like the season is already on its way and corn needs, I think, at least the one I planted, maybe 90 days. So we will see if we end up with corn this year or not. This has just been such a disappointment, and obviously I need to get in there and weed, but you can see how many weeds I have compared to my other sections that are mulched. So it really makes a big difference. But at least in the middle here, my squash are doing okay. So I have 8 different butternut squash plants, minus one in the middle is a Cinderella pumpkin. And I love to grow them in the middle of my corn because then they'll start sprawling underneath the corn and creating kind of a living mulch. But we'll see if I end up having corn to support the squash or not. So more to come on that, but what I did do yesterday, as you may be able to see, is I kind of went plant by plant and alternated which way the leader goes so that they're not all going this way. They're kind of going back and forth, and so that hopefully they'll be spread evenly. And I love growing the butternut squash. It's really resistant to the squash vine borer. I never have issues with that, and it stores really, really well. We're eating it well into the spring. So love the butternut squash, and the Cinderella pumpkin is okay. It doesn't store quite as well as the butternut squash, but so we make sure to eat that first. But man, butternut squash is great for self-sufficiency and building up those food stores, especially with the long winters that we have. We don't have fresh food available all that much of the year. And then the last row over here are my shallots and onions. So I really went for it this year. I feel like last year was such a disappointment that I'm just really putting pedal to the metal this year, banking on it working out. If you're new here, last year my onions bolted and that was so sad. I didn't have much for fresh eating onions all winter because they don't store very well. I had to freeze dry most of it, which was okay. That was a great way to save it, but just not my typical and favorite way to save my onions for the winter. I usually like to braid them. I have a great YouTube video showing how to braid them if you want to check that out. I did my spacing slightly different this year. Typically I do it on a 4-inch grid, where this year I did 4 inches spacing this way, but 6 inches this way, so that there's a little bit more elbow room in here. I do it pretty tight, I feel like, compared to most gardeners, and minus last year, it has served me well. So these guys are starting to catch up. I planted them a little bit later than I usually do because I was so nervous about them cooling down and then heating back up and then bolting again. So I just really played it safe and planted them quite a bit later than I typically do. So I feel like they're a little bit behind. Definitely, you know, not much for bulb development yet. They've only been in the ground a few weeks, so more to come on those. But the shallots are definitely bigger. I planted those earlier since they did not bolt last year, so I thought I could be a little bit more adventurous with them, I guess. And we're getting there. Still no massive bulb development yet, but probably by July we'll see a bit more there. So I think that's it for the big kind of bulk stuff that I have going on in the back garden. So let's, actually one more thing before we move on to my other sections. This is another new thing that I've never grown before, and they're sweet potatoes. So these are slips that I made from my very favorite purple sweet potatoes that are just delicious that I get from Azure Standard. And I thought, we'll give it a try. I've heard some mixed reviews from people about if it's even possible to grow sweet potatoes in Minnesota since they need hot weather and a long season, and I don't really have either of those, minus this past weekend, I suppose, which was such a weird weekend for June. But so they must have liked it. They're cranking away. I decided to do them in grow bags so that they'll keep the soil temp a little bit warmer. I can move it in if it frosts. I don't know. We'll see if any of you guys in zone 3, zone 4A have successfully grown sweet potatoes. Let me know all your tips. We'll see how it goes. So now let's head up to the cabin where I have a few more gardens to show you. Okay, so lots of changes happening up here. The first you might notice is the rhubarb. I moved, so it used to be up next to the cabin, and it was just too hot. It wasn't thriving there, and it looks much happier here, which I'm glad because this rhubarb is so special to me. It is over 150 years old. It's been passed down throughout my family for many generations. It actually came over on the boat from Sweden, so really want to make sure that I don't kill it. So I have it mulched, and yeah, it's just loving this new space. So that's been great to have here. And then I've expanded my raised beds a little bit. I used to just have those 3 last year, and then I added this 4th because last year I did a pepper experiment and I finally unlocked my secret to success for growing peppers is raised beds. Our soil temperature, at least for me, is just too cold, and they just really struggled to grow well in the ground. So up in the raised beds, they were maybe 3 times bigger than the ones that were in the ground. So really doubled my efforts. I have all sorts of varieties in here, you know, cayenne, poblanos, ají rico, corno de toro. What else? I have some habanadas, which that's gonna be a new variety for me. I'm super excited to try that. I have my Scotch bonnets, which I grew for the first time last year. They're still pretty shrimpy, so I'm hoping they'll catch up now that the heat is starting to finally turn on around here. But this makes the best hot sauce that you'll ever have in your entire life. Highly recommend the Scotch bonnets. And I do use, you know, some small cages that I happen to have on hand back when I first started gardening, and I thought these small cages would work for tomatoes. Don't waste your time. But they're great for peppers. But I don't have enough. So when I run out, I just use a basic stick with some twine. That works just fine for me. And I did have an open spot here, so I decided to go for it with carrots. I have heavy clay, rocky soil, and so not only did the aster yellows, got a bunch of weeds in here, destroy my carrots last year, but the soil, it's not their favorite. They like loose, sandy, workable soil, and so the soil's a lot better in here, more workable. So I thought I'd give it a try. Did a couple rows of carrots. They're easier to weed in here, so they're a little bit better maintained, not by much, but yeah, we'll see how they like it up here. And this is my now sad bed. It was absolutely gorgeous. This was a picture perfect bed that I was so proud of, and then knowing that the 95-degree day was coming, I just kind of aggressively harvested everything out of here. So this was radishes, those are all gone. These are some green onions. These are doing okay. I pulled out some baby greens or mustard greens that I had already bolted here. These are just your basic baby greens. These are still hanging in there, believe it or not. And then I have a few heads of lettuce, but I harvested a bunch of this before the heat wave hit. And then here on the back side of these lettuce heads, I had a bunch of baby arugula. I just came in panic, trimmed it all off, and it's in the fridge so we can use that. The best way I found to keep them is just in a Ziploc bag with a paper towel. That seems to work pretty well. So looking a little bit more sad, but now that I have some open areas, these lettuces won't last too much longer. I'll have to start thinking about what I want to put in here. I still have some extra plants just sitting on that table there. Maybe they'll finally have a home. And I guess with the whole pulling out the radishes, I forgot to say back there in the back garden that I had this lovely grouping of kohlrabi that I also harvested. So there was a big bare patch. That's what that was. But I love the purple kohlrabi. They are so, so pretty. And then here is largely my perennials. These are all strawberries. And because things have been so cool, you can see my strawberries still are not ripe. We are still waiting on those. It might be until July till we get strawberries. We will see. Other things going on in here is this is my marshmallow plant. This is a medicinal plant. So you actually harvest the roots, I believe on year 2. I think we're at year 2, so maybe I'll pull some up. It's just a great tool to have in your herbal medicine kit. My St. John's wort in here, but it did not survive our winter. We got down to -30, I think. And so apparently it just didn't quite like that. So I had an empty spot, so I put one of my Scotch bonnets in there. And then over here is my landscaping garden. I'm a huge fan of utilizing your landscaping for garden space. Why waste it on boring plants or things that you can't utilize? So let's go ahead and see what all I have going on in here. The first are chives. These guys are so beautiful. I mean, who wouldn't want that growing in their landscaping? Now I do have something non-edible, I believe at least, and these are my great grandpa's irises. So that's another special plant for me. So that is staying. Other things I love to put in landscaping are blueberries, and you can see we're starting to get some blueberries on here, and we're getting some good growth on there. The one thing I'm not as impressed with is this one. I didn't get any blueberries last year, and it doesn't look like we have any this year either, so I don't know. Might need to pull that one out if it just doesn't produce. Other things I have here are largely herbs. I used to have my herbs way out at the back garden my first year here. So this is my 3rd year at our new property. And I realized that was just so far. It's not like that far, but if I just want to quick grab some herbs while I'm cooking, it was too far to leave things unattended on the burner. So I've moved a lot of my herbs over here, which I'm loving. So first up is some mint. I just have that in a terracotta pot because these can be invasive, so I don't like to put those in the ground. The rosemary experiment last year failed. So I planted rosemary here last year thinking that maybe it'll survive our winters. I think it's typically a zone 5, zone 6 plant. So when I used to live in Kansas City, it would come back every year and I got this huge, gorgeous bush, and nope, even here protected next to the cabin, it did not survive. So these are all new ones that I got from my local nursery. Yep, these will just end up being annuals for me unless I want to bring them in every winter, but we are in a tiny cabin, so there's not all that much room for that type of thing. So I'll probably just keep buying it every year. And then the basil is doing okay. I have mostly regular basil. I have some Thai basil back here. It was looking pretty yellow and just kind of stunted. Again, I don't think it was liking our cool spring. And then the heat hit and now I'm noticing like some little flowers on there. It's starting to even think about bolting. So I don't know, basil is definitely one of the more finicky herbs. Last year I had a fantastic harvest. We'll see what ends up happening with these guys. And then I just seeded some dill down here. You can see that they're just starting. I need to get in there and do some thinning, but I thought this would be a good spot for the dill because it tends to get pretty high and that's not where the window is. So I didn't want them to grow up into the window. So I think those will be great. Hopefully they'll be up by the time I'm ready to make pickles. I'm starting to worry that I did this too late since my cucumbers are cranking along pretty well. This section is kind of hit and miss. This is where my thyme is. So this one is from last year. This one's from last year. This one too. But, oh, you know what? I was gonna say this one's dead, but I'd say it's largely dead. This one is totally dead. This one's totally dead. So it's kind of hit and miss on what came back after the last winter. So I'm thankful that I did start some new plants. These are ones that I started this spring and they're looking good. I think we're getting long enough where I can come by and just do a little snip and start freeze drying them. When they're freeze dried, they just taste a whole lot better. They seem fresher, the color's more vibrant, so just so good. Other things are, this is lemon balm. I love to make tea out of this. It's also great just muddled into a glass of cold water in the summertime for a refreshing just beverage. And then next to it, I have oregano. So this one's getting there. It hasn't filled out as much as I would hope by now. So hopefully in a couple more weeks I can get in there and do some harvesting. We like to eat a lot of oregano in the winter time. These two are also in terracotta pots because they can also be invasive. So don't put those in your garden. I lost some garden space since we installed this mini split last fall. I have a video on us installing it, which is kind of fun if you want to check it out. And then not much going here. So this is where my pak choi was. I panic harvested all of that last week before the heat wave hit. We've been eating that. It's been delicious. I have some little bits of cilantro started. I love cilantro. It's probably one of my favorite herbs. I put it like lettuce on a taco. It's so good. So we're getting there. They just are getting started. Somehow these lettuce heads are still doing okay. They haven't bolted in the heat, so we're still harvesting from those. I think what's kind of helping is that this is a fairly shady spot. We have those two trees there, but they do get afternoon sun. So that seems to work pretty well for these types of things. They all like a little bit of shade. It's also going to keep the cilantro from bolting as well. But what did bolt, and if you guys grow this, give me some tips because this is new to me. I planted this for the first time last year, and this is sorrel, which was so fun because it came up really early in the spring, like one of the first things, and the leaves are delicious. They have like a lemony flavor to it. I like to describe it as like salad dressing built into the leaf, but it bolted super early and now I don't know what to do with it. Like, do I break these off? Do I just let it go? I don't know what to do. I suppose I could look it up, but if someone wants to tell me, I'll take that too. And then over here are a few more herbs. So I have 3 parsley plants. These guys are coming in well. I've been harvesting actually quite a bit from them, so they look a little scrawny. They'll keep filling in. And then sage as well. So this one tends to come back really well. These 2 came back from last year, so they had a good head start. They're up and running. I should definitely get in there and do some harvesting. This was a new one that I started this year, so have some catch up to do to big brother and sister. But otherwise, I think we are doing pretty good with the little herb garden back here. What do you think, Benny? Are you gonna get that squirrel? Yeah, I bet. You tell him. You keep him out of my garden. And then I have my new garden section that we just put in this spring. I'm so pumped. I hope it'll turn out. We'll take a peek over here. And it is around the corner, and it's this whole section here. So those are just a couple hostas, but we basically, there was all this just shrubby stuff. I don't even know what most of this is, just wild things that were just growing straight into the yard. And we thought, well, what if we came in and pulled out a decent strip all the way around the edge? Ryan used his excavator, thankfully. That would have been a huge job to do by hand. And then we brought in all these rocks that we just had laying around from digging around in our soil. We have rocks everywhere, and I think it came out to be pretty nice. So what did I plant in here? So pretty much all of them are berry plants except for one. I do have a lilac at the very end because I love lilacs. They're just so beautiful, but I have some pretty unique berry plants in here. Some of them that I've never heard of before. So I'm excited to see how they do. This is a josta berry. This is an aronia berry. This is a black currant. That one's pretty typical. And this is a gooseberry plant, another common one here in Minnesota. This one seems to have died and I don't have a label on it, so I'm not sure. This is another aronia berry. These guys are super small. I guess they'll end up being 6 foot tall, but we will see. I feel kind of silly planting a raspberry, but I wanted to try a cool variety. So this is a yellow one. So that's something I can't find naturally on our property. So hopefully it doesn't take over. I'm a little worried about this one. And then this one I thought was cool. This is gonna be a white currant, so kind of a unique berry there. This one is another Josta berry. This is a dead gooseberry, oopsies. I believe this is another Josta berry. And then over here I have an elderberry, which also seems silly because we actually have tons of elderberries growing wild on our property, but they're all red elderberries, which are toxic. You don't want to eat those. So really wanted to get more of the black elderberries, which are medicinal and wonderful, and we love making elderberry syrup. We had a ton of them at our last homestead, but I have been very unsuccessful in finding wild black elderberries here at our new place. So that's it for garden tour in June. It has been a wild weather past couple of months. It's either been really cold or really hot with nothing in between. So hopefully July will even out, but we will see. Stay tuned for July garden tour where we'll see where everything ends up. As always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your patience. I know it's been a long time since I put out a real YouTube video. It feels so good to be back. And yeah, I'll catch you on the next tour. Have a great day.